President, please be seated. The court is back in session. Before giving the floor to the defense, to the college lawyers for civil parties to put question to this civil party, the chamber would like to inform the parties in case 002/02 that during the hearings this afternoon and the following days, due to the health issue of Judge Claudia Fan, she is not able to be on the bench. After deliberating and discussing with the judges of the bench, the chamber decides to appoint Judge Martin Korobkin to replace Judge Claudia Fan until the time that Judge Fan is able to perform her duties before the chamber. The decision is based on internal rule 99.4 of the ECCC. So now I give the floor to the representative of this college lawyers for civil parties. You may have the floor now.
Mr. Prakdern, when we finished off just before, we were just going into a description of your children. In evidence previously, you said you had 5 daughters and 1 son. I just want to take you through, you to take us through your daughters one by one. So, starting with your first daughter, what was her name and how old was she in 1975?
Answer. I have 6 children, 5 daughters and 1 son. The first daughter name is Pao Jim, and the second daughter is Pao Mao, 12 years old, Pao Liam, 10 years old, and the fourth daughter is Kim, female, 8 years old, and the 5th child is Pao Lon, 4 years old, and the 6th child is 1 year and a half. The 6th child is a son.
Did you ever refer to any of your children by another name?
Answer. During the Pol Pot regime, I did not use the original names, that is the Vietnamese name. At that time, I used the name Mika Bat and Mika Puk for some of my daughters.
Which daughter did you use those names, Mika Bak and Mika Buk?
The fourth daughter, her original name was Pao Leng or Kim. During the Pol Pot regime, I told the children within the children unit that her name was Mika Bat or Mika Puk.
You said that your second child was named Pao Kiem, and your fourth child you also referred to as Pao Kiem. Did you refer to your second daughter by any other name?
បាទ
Answer. I only used the name Migaba or Mikapuk for one of my daughters during the Pol Pot time, and for other daughters and sons I used the original name, and later on after the regime I turned to use her original name, that is Kiem.
And why did you use a different name for your daughter during the Pol Pot regime, during the Khmer Rouge regime?
Answer. The reason is that members of the children's unit would have known that she was the daughter of the Vietnamese family. For her safety, I told members of the children's unit that her name was actually Mikabat or Mikapuk.
What would have happened to her if they had known that her name was Pao Kiem?
I object, Mr. President. That's asking for speculation.
Your Honour, the civil party has given evidence that he referred to his daughter by other names for her own safety. So I'm asking for some clarification as to how he thought that it would protect her to call her by these different names. If I might rephrase the question.
change this.
President, the objection of the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Chia is overruled. The chamber is interested in the answer by the civil party to the question put by the lawyer for civil party. Mr. Civil Party, please give the response to the last question. Civil party, I would like to tell the chamber that because I was afraid that I would lose my daughter if I was using her original name, that is the Vietnamese name at that time, she would have been killed. For this reason, I referred to her I used a different name for her.
Can you tell us what year you started to use a different name for your daughter?
Answer. It was in 1976, perhaps mid-year of 1976, said civil party.
Just also a point of clarification, you said that you had a son who was 1.5 years old. This son was not yet born in 1975, is that right?
Answer. Later on in 1975, I was evacuated from my village. And and my son was born in late 1976.
Thank you. Mr. Prakdern, I just want to talk now about your relocation. You said you were evacuated from your village in 1975. What village were you living in when you were evacuated?
Answer. Khmer Rouge removed me from Anjanyurung commune, Boribo district.
You gave evidence earlier that you were relocated to Pek Chanva village. Is this place next to a mountain?
Answer. This village was about 15 kilometers away from the mountain. After we were put in an area near the mountain, we were dispersed into different units. The wives would be sent into the cooperatives to work in the field, and the husbands would be sent to work in the fishing unit, and we would meet each other once in every fortnight.
Going back to this mountain, what was the name of the mountain?
Answer. Its name was Kok.
Was all of your family relocated to Pek Chanva village near Cook Mountain?
Answer. During the time that we were living together, it was in Pechangwa. Later on, I was relocated to somewhere else, and I did not know at the time where my wife was. If I dared ask a question about my wife's whereabouts, I would have been taken away and killed. I had to keep silent. I had to perform the duty assigned by Angka. And later on, I was relocated to another village, that is Tekuntil.
How long did you spend at Pek Chanva village before you were relocated to the next place?
Answer. During the time I was with my wife, I could stay there for a fortnight. Later on, I was sent to live in Sri Piakante village, Kosromo commune. I was there in a fishing unit.
You said earlier in your evidence that you were then transferred to Tarmuf Island. When did that occur?
Answer. I did not know about the timing exactly. I would go anywhere I was asked to go, and I did not pay attention to the date and time.
When you were transferred to Tarmuf Island, was your whole family transferred with you?
Answer. No. Only I was sent to Tamil, and 3 or 4 members of my families were sent into a fishing unit to find fish for the base areas.
So did your wife and your children remain in Pek Chanvar village when you were transferred to Tamuf Island?
Answer. Before I was sent to Tamil, I was with my family. One of my child was sent into the adolescence unit, and my daughter, another daughter, was sent into a children unit, and another daughter was sent into a training so that he or she so that she could be used in the field.
And the units that your children were sent to, were they on Tamuf Island or were they in another place?
Answer. Actually, they were sent into the mobile unit, so the workstations would vary depending on the assignments. And at the time, I was not sure where they were assigned to work on which particular locations. After 15 days of their relocation, my children would send me information that they would be in particular location.
How long did you stay at Tamuf Island?
Answer. I was at Sraipiakante and Tamau Island for 1 year and a half.
Who were the chiefs of your village at Tamuf Island?
Answer. The cadre who was there were 4 cadres supervising me, 3 men, 1 woman. One is the Rua, and another one was in charge of fishing unit. His name was Hum, and the third cadre's name was Kamrat Na, and the fourth cadre's name was Kamrat Kuan, who was in charge in economics.
Did you see your wife again during the time that you were at Tamuf Island?
Answer. 1 year later, I told Anka that I missed my wife and children, and I submitted a request to visit my family. During that time, the food was scarce on the island, and on certain locations we could find some, snail and some plants to eat.
So did your wife eventually join you on Tamuf Island?
Answer. With the kind heart, the cadres granted the request that I asked my wife and my children to come and live on the island. So 1 year and a half later, we could live here together.
And now we're talking about near the end of 1976, is that right?
Answer. Yes, that is right. It almost reached 1977.
When your wife joined you at Tamuf Island, did the Khmer Rouge know that you were married to an ethnically Vietnamese woman?
Mr. President, I object to the words Khmer Rouge in the question. Either it's a name of a local cadre who could have had knowledge, or it's the CPK. If we are in the beginning of 77 or end of 76, it's the CPK or Democratic Kampuchea. The Khmer Rouge is a very generic term which should be left only to be used by civil parties or witnesses.
I'm very happy to rephrase the question, Your Honour. When your wife joined you at Tamuf Island, did any of the soldiers or cadre who were working under the CPK or the Democratic Kampuchea know that she was ethnically Vietnamese and that you were married to an ethnic Vietnamese woman?
Answer. Mr. President, my apology. They understood that my mother-in-law was ethnically Vietnamese because she spoke not clearly in Khmer. For instance, she would say "sơ" rather than "chơ" and "umbel" rather than "umbel." For my wife, she could speak clearly Khmer. Again, my mother-in-law could not speak clearly Khmer, so because of this, she was taken away and killed.
Did the cadre in your village say anything about the fact of your wife and your mother-in-law being ethnic Vietnamese?
Answer. After I came back from the fishing unit, I was asked whether my wife was Khmer or Vietnamese. If I had said that my wife was Khmer, I would have been taken away and killed since my mother-in-law was ethnically Vietnamese. So I decided to tell the truth that my wife was the daughter of my mother-in-law, who was ethnically Vietnamese.
And how did they react to that?
Answer. They did not react, but I did not know whether they had something in mind or they had a grudge against me. I do not understand what they were thinking at the time.
I just want to turn to the composition of the people who were on Tamuf Island. Can you tell the court how many Vietnamese people there were on the island and how many Khmer persons there were?
Answer. Concerning the married men and women, there were 7 families of married men and women. Some men married the Vietnamese women, and some Vietnamese women, some Khmer women married the Vietnamese men.
Do you remember how many of these mixed marriages comprised of a Vietnamese wife and a Khmer husband, and how many of these couples were the Khmer husband and a Khmer wife and Vietnamese husband?
Answer. During the Pol Pot time, the Vietnamese men or women were not matched with each other to be husband and wife. Actually, they got married during the Sihanouk time. And as I said, there were 7 families of mixed Vietnamese men and women.
Apart from your mixed marriage, where your wife was ethnic Vietnamese, how many of these 7 families also comprised of an ethnic Vietnamese wife and a Khmer husband?
Answer. I am not sure. I only know that there were 7 families. I did not pay close attention to the exact numbers. What I can tell is that there were 7 families of the mixed marriages. For instance, there was, if there were 7 husbands, then there would be 7 Vietnamese wives.
Were the Vietnamese people on Ta Move Island identified by the CPK cadre on the island?
Answer. Actually, they suspected on me. They were searching out for particular people. They actually were aware of how many people are Vietnamese within one family.
Do you know how they were aware of who was Vietnamese?
It was probably the information given from those who came from the unit, and I recall there was a comrade Chum who left the village and who said that this man married a Vietnamese wife, and maybe those people wanted to exchange information for rights, so they told about us. However, as I stated, I already called this comrade who actually told them about us, that in my case that I, a Cambodian man, married a Vietnamese wife.
You mentioned earlier that your mother-in-law spoke Khmer not very well, and that she would pronounce certain words in a certain way which identified her as being a non-Khmer or Vietnamese native language speaker. Were there any language tests that...
They made a further report, and that they exchanged information about us for food, and they were asked whether they were certain about the conditions. Like in my case, that I was Khmer but married to a Vietnamese woman.
Were you aware of any movements of Vietnamese people to Vietnam during your time at Ta Move Island?
heard the unit chief said that those Vietnamese who had been gathered were the subjects to be returned to Vietnam. They also made an announcement if anyone wished to go through, they should go. But my wife would not go to live or to die. She would stay with me.
Did you see any boats going in the direction of Vietnam from where you were at on Tamuf Island at any time?
I saw they rounded up people and put into a covered boat along the river, and that was the boat that I saw, and there were about 20 to 30 people on that boat. However, there were many branches from Tonle Sap, and I did not know whether other boats were living at the branches of the river.
Did you see any of the people on the boat? You said there were 20 or 30. Did you recognize anyone?
I only recognized one person, that is Comrade Am, whom I knew since the Sihanouk regime, and he actually said goodbye to me, and I knew for sure that he was returning back to his country. Later on, I quietly said to my wife that he was lucky as he was heading back to Vietnam, and that we might be in a difficult situation living in Cambodia. I said that because I saw the Khmer Rouge actually dismantled a Buddha statue. It means that they no longer had any belief in the religion.
Just going back to the people you saw on the boat, were these people Vietnamese people?
I knew for sure that they were all Vietnamese. However, I was from a far distance from the boat, and I only recognized this person that I mentioned earlier.
Was your wife with you when you saw this boat pass?
No, she did not see the boat as it was being used to make fermented fish and to dry fish. And by the time I went to see her, the boat had passed for about 500 meters or 1 kilometer.
Now, were you aware of any policies that the CPK had in relation to treatment of Vietnamese people?
There was one Vietnamese who was not sent at that time, and her name was Anh. Her parents had been sent, but she remained in the cooperative. The soldiers said that she should not speak Vietnamese at all, and that she should only speak the Khmer language. I was there, and I was making the fish net in order to get fish to supply to the Khmer Rouge. And then I heard the woman speaking the Vietnamese, and then they called her to meet them, and then they pulled her by her hair and beat her up. 2 days later, she was sent to Setlap and later on further to Vietnam. And from that time onward, she disappeared.
Did you hear anything either from the cadre on Tamuf Island or on radio broadcast about the Khmer Rouge preparations or planning or policy about what they would do with the Vietnamese?
President, Mr. Civil Party, please hold on, and Councillor Copper, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have various objections to this question, actually also already to the prior question. I think it's very important for Council to be very specific when it comes to the period of time that she's asking questions about. In the last question, I again heard her refer to the Khmer Rouge. It's worth noting that it wasn't until November '77 that Pol Pot openly announced that it was in fact the CPK which was in charge of Democratic Kampuchea. It's also worth while noting that there's a big difference in time in the period before the Vietnamese troops massively invaded for the first time Cambodia in '77 and before. Also, I don't think, noting the fact that this witness is an ordinary citizen, that he can say anything intelligently about any policy, whether it be of the CPK, whether it be of the Democratic Kampuchea government. So I think Council should be very specific when she's asking questions. Of course, the witness or the civil party can be more generic in his answers, but we're on a segment that deals with genocide, so it's very important that we be very concrete in time, etc.
May I proceed, Your Honour? Mr. Prakdeur.
President, Council Copper only made an observation, and for that reason, Civil Party Council, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honours. Mr. Prakdeur, in your evidence earlier, you said your wife was with you on Tamuf Island for about 1 year. The time frame that we're talking about is December 1976 to December 1977. Is that right?
I may not be clear regarding the month. However, whatever I said is the truth. So please apologize if I cannot recall the exact month, because when I talk about it, I'm thinking about my children who passed away.
Thank you, Mr. Prakdeur. During the time that you were at Tamuf Island and when your wife was with you, was there anything that you heard from the cadre on that island which caused you fear about your fate or her fate?
One day while I was working in my cooperative, part of it was flooded and the other was not. And we had an announcement on the radio seeking the Vietnamese who infiltrated inside. And while I listened to that announcement, I paid attention to it, and I thought that all the Vietnamese had been guarded. My wife and other people also spoke about it, that those Vietnamese who were accused of infiltrated inside the rank had all been gathered and sent back to Vietnam.
What were the exact words that you heard on this radio broadcast?
Answer. I could not recall the exact word of the announcement. However, a comrade said that we in the cooperative had to be ready, as Vietnamese would be collected from various cooperatives, and I did not know whether they would be gathered and killed. President Council Kongsamon, you had the floor. Council Kongsamon, actually, I raised to object to the last question. The lawyer for civil party said that this civil party actually heard the announcement over the radio. But from my understanding, she actually did not hear the announcement on the radio, but he heard the cadres talking about this amongst themselves as they heard that information through the announcement on the radio that they were searching for the Vietnamese who infiltrated. So I believe her question is not proper. President, lawyer for civil party, you may proceed.
Your Honour, the evidence of this civil party was that he heard an announcement on the radio about Vietnamese infiltration from the inside, and after that, a comrade who was also around then said that the Vietnamese were to be collected. That's the evidence that I heard from this witness. But if this civil party could be allowed to perhaps provide some clarification. Mr. Prakdern, could you clarify what you said before about what you heard on the radio and what happened after that?
While I was working, a group of soldiers walking past by, and later on at night time, my wife said that we might not live together again because I might be sent to Vietnam. And I was shocked hearing that, but I didn't allow my wife to know about my feeling. I knew for sure that my wife would be sent back, or that she would be taken away and killed. However, I didn't tell my wife of what I thought, and later on the husbands and wives were taken away.
Now, I'd like to talk about the last day that you saw your wife. Could you explain what happened leading to your separation that day?
And you asking me when I left Pachong Hua, or while I was living with my family in the cooperative?
I'm asking about the time that you and your wife were on Ta Move Island together, and the last day that you saw your wife on Ta Move Island.
I lived with my wife and children in Tamov Island, my wife was assigned to work in the plantation, while I was sent to go fishing. I was thinking all the time that my wife would be separated from me by that time, although I did not say anything. However, at that time there was no accusation made by the Khmer rules. My wife and I kept thinking to ourselves. However, we didn't speak to anyone about that. Since we were afraid that we would be taken away, or if somebody overheard, we speak about that.
When was the last time you saw your wife?
We were working separately during the daytime, and at night time I could sleep with my wife, and we spoke to one another about the lack of food, and we thought that if we were to die, it's better if we die first and not the children first, because we had already lost one of our children, that is the eldest one.
Could you tell...
President Council Kong Som-on, you have the floor. Kong Som-on, thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. President, I would seek your advice to actually intervene the civil party when he makes his response. It seems that he doesn't seem to respond to the question at all. President, thank you, Council, for that. And Mr. Civil Parties, as you were advised from the outset, you need to pause a little bit to listen to the questions carefully, and then prepare your response according to the nature of the question. And lawyer for civil parties, you may continue.
Your Honour, this morning my client did have very, very high blood pressure. Perhaps if the civil party could be asked if he feels well enough to proceed.
President, Mr. Pradhan, are you in a position to continue your testimony? This morning you have been advised that due to your health, you should let the chamber know if you need to rest, and the duty doctor informs the chamber that you can testify. However, we again would like to advise you, if you need to rest, please raise your hand so that we can have a short break or a long break depending on the status of your health. Are you able to continue, Mr. Civil Party? Civil Party. Yes, I was checked by the doctor and he gave me some medicine. In the morning my blood pressure was at 19, by lunchtime it was 14, and before I appeared again before Your Honor it was at 15. And I believe I can continue. President, if there is the case, the Council, you may continue your questioning.
Mr. Pradhan, you said that your wife was with you on Tamuf Island around December 1976 to December 1977. What happened to your wife?
as I informed the president, I cannot recall the year.
Can you tell us what happened to your wife during the last day that you saw her?
As I said, nothing happened.
How did the Cadre on Tamuf Island deal with the mixed marriage couples?
No, they did not blame me, but they blamed the other cadres, and they blamed Samdach Sihanu. That after we got married, we had to register our marriage in order to obtain the certificate, and they blamed why they made a marriage certificate for a Cambodian husband who married a Vietnamese wife.
Did the Cadre on Tamuf Island separate the mixed marriage couples from the rest of the people on the island?
I was together with my wife and children. However, for the other 6 families, they were assigned to work separately, although the distance was not that far. For example, one would work at the upper part of the plantation, while the other was in the middle. And some family members were assigned to go fishing, while others were assigned to work in the rice field. So there were 3 distinct kinds of jobs which were assigned to us.
Were you separated from your wife sometime in 1977?
Yes, the separation was more than a year, as I stated from the outset.
Were you permanently separated from your wife in late 1977?
We worked at a separate location during the daytime. However, at night time we were allowed to unite.
Mr. Prakdern, could you tell me about the day that you saw your wife for the first time? What happened at the beginning of that day?
I don't understand your question. Please repeat it.
Your wife, you said, was killed during the Khmer Rouge period. Could you explain what happened on the last day that you saw her on Tamuf Island?
During the last day that we were together, on on that day, the cadres said that they would send those people back, and I thought it would mean only for my wife, but the cadre said it means both the husband and the wife. So they gathered all those families who either had a Vietnamese wife or a Vietnamese husband, and as I said, the total was 7 families. And they were called up in order to travel, but they did not arrest them or tie them up. They were allowed to walk. However, they left at night time. And may I continue?
Yes, please do.
So when we traveled at night, that night, we were asked to stop at one location, and then I asked whether we were allowed to rest there, and they said that some of us would be allowed to stay there at Tulkamanlung. They didn't scold us or anything at that point, and they said that our group would be assigned to stress rice, and as for the other group, that is my wife's group, that would be sent to plant vegetable. And I was thinking why they only call me, who had a Vietnamese wife. And then I asked another comrade to have the youngest child to be with me, but he refused. He said that it's better for the child to be with my wife. And then the Vietnamese wives of other men were allowed to go. So I then were thinking that they would not allow children belonging to Vietnamese wives to move away. Then while I was stressing the rice, the unit chief, I overheard the unit chief said that those people had been smashed. And they said that the young children were thrown into the air, and then they were pierced with a bayonet. That's how I heard people speaking about the killing of those people, and I was shocked when I heard that.
Mr. Prakdern, you said that they gathered all mixed marriage families, that being 7 mixed marriage families. What time that day did they gather these mixed marriage families together?
Answer. At that time, I almost lost consciousness. I recall that it was during the time that the water in the river receded. I cannot tell you the exact date.
I'm talking about the time of the morning on the day that they gathered the mixed marriage families together. Do you remember what time that was? Was it early?
Answer. It was night time when we were collected and sent away. We were walking along the road where there were ponds, and when we were tired, we were allowed to relax for a few minutes or hours. There were ponds on the sides of the road, and we had no rice to eat. When we were tired, we were allowed to rest, but when they wanted us to go on, to walk on, then they would wake us up.
How long did you walk before you stopped walking?
Answer. From my estimates, I had to travel 4, 5, or 10 kilometers. After 6 or 7 kilometers of my traveling, I asked comrades to allow me to take rest. There were only 2 cadres. One was a female and another one was a male. The male was about 14 years old and the female was about 18 years old. They did not have sticks or any equipment. They were walking all of us, and during the traveling, during the journey, they did not scold or beat us up.
You said there were 7 mixed marriage families and some children in this march, in this walk. Could you explain or clarify how many people were in the group altogether?
Answer. There were 7 members within the group said with the civil party. Actually, there were 7 married men and 7 married women, and together with children. I noticed that there were 2 small children. One belongs to me and another one belongs to the other family.
So your young son was with you. What about your mother-in-law? Was she also with you?
Answer. My mother-in-law was also within the group. She was with all of us. During the time, there was my mother-in-law, my wife, my child, one of my child, and I.
What happened at the point in the road where you stopped after you were walking about 5 to 10 kilometres? What happened then?
Answer. During the journey, nothing happened to me. No accusation was made against all of us. We were traveling, and on some occasion we were so tired. The roads that we were traveling on were not like the same road as we are traveling these days. They were small roads. When we reached the place where they wanted to kill us, then they divided us into groups.
Could you describe how you were divided into groups? Who went in which group?
Answer. We were divided into forces. For my mother-in-law and my wife, together with the Vietnamese women, they were sent into a group to work in the field. For me and other men, we were sent to be in a group which was responsible for stressing rice. And at the time, I was wondering why the Vietnamese men were not sent into my group. My wife at that time was well aware that she would be in danger. As for my mother-in-law, she knew nothing about what was going to happen.
So is it correct to say that the Vietnamese men and women were in one group and the Cambodian men and women were in another group?
Answer, yes, that is correct.
And which group did the children go to?
Answer, my wife, together with my little child, went into a group together with other Vietnamese people. If the mother was Khmer, then the child would be allowed to be with the mother in the group of Khmer.
What happened if the child was Vietnamese?
President, please do not respond to the question. Lawyer for civil party, please do not pose hypothetical question to this civil party. I notice you are on your feet. You may now have the floor, counsel for Mr. Kirsumpon.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your observation. I understood from the testimony from this civil party that there were 2 children in the group, and therefore there is no need for hypothetical questions. Perhaps we can simply ask which group were the 2 children in. It might be a simpler way and thereby avoid hypothetical questions. Thank you.
President, lawyer for civil party, please refrain yourself from asking hypothetical question, and you are instructed to reformulate your question.
Your Honours, the question I asked and the response that was given was that if the mother was Khmer, insofar as what I heard, then the child was allowed to be with the mother. Now, the question is not so much a theoretical question as a question which follows from what rules were applied at the time of this separation at this point in the road. But I am certainly happy to rephrase the question. Mr. Prakdern, what happened to the other child?
Answer. As I told the court already, the child or children were thrown up into the air, and they were killed with the bayonet. As I said, they were killed with the bayonet. I did not witness the incidents. I was told about this incident. This happened to the children who were brought away with the mothers. The mother had been killed before the children were killed. President, it is now time for recess. We will take a short break from now until 3 o'clock. Court officer, please assist the civil party during the break time, and please invite him back into the courtroom together with the Duty Council at 3 o'clock. The court is now in recess.